It's my pleasure to introduce our first guest, Jason Averbook. Jason's CEO and co-founder of Leapgen, an expert in HR technology and the future of work. Welcome, Jason. It's great to be here with you today.
Thank you. Great to be here, and humbled and honored.
Thank you. So, employee experience. We've seen this topic explode over the last year. Organizations are listing as a top priority, and they're focused on this as one of their most important topics. So maybe it would help if we start with a definition. What is employee experience, and what does it mean?
Yeah, when we think about employee experience, what we're doing is we're making sure that we understand how our workforce feels. How our workforce feels when it comes to themselves doing their jobs, being part of work. Now, when I say how they feel, like we've been tracking forever, and there's going to be people that say, oh, we've been doing engagement surveys once a year, and we've been doing performance reviews once a year, and we ask them once a year how they're doing. That's not employee experience. That's a bad employee experience. When we talk about employee experience, we mean in real time, as individuals are doing their jobs, how do they experience work? It's so important to remember it's 2022. Outside of work, what year does it feel like inside of work? And it's not just about technology, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. It's about how do they feel throughout the entire journey.
Got it. Why does employee experience matter?
Great question. I mean, if we think about it, why does it matter how your relationship is with people outside of work? One of the things that we constantly need to work on in the HR space is to remember that we're humans outside of work, but guess what? We're humans inside of work. So does experience matter? Does your customer experience matter? Of course it matters. Does your relationship with your spouse, partner, family members matter? Of course it matters. Why does employee experience matter? Of course it matters. We've shifted to an experience economy. We've gone from a manufacturing economy to a knowledge economy to an experience economy where everything needs to be measured based on experience, and that's what will determine the longevity, the satisfaction, and the productivity of the workforce.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about what is a well-designed work experience?
So great question again. You're really good at these questions. When we think about a great experience, an employee experience, it starts, and it has to start with putting the employee or putting the human at the center. I don't like to just say employee because it could be an applicant. It could be a candidate. It could be a contractor. It could be an alumni, all of which are equally important. So when we think about that, overall, where does it start and where must it start? By design, keyword, designing with the human at the center. And what that requires is that we understand the human. We listen to the human, and we truly design with them in mind. So we in HR forever have spoken a language called HR. And that's interesting. It's important to us. But when we think about the workforce shouldn't know how to spell HR. The workforce just wants to get something done and get it done in a way that feels and delivers satisfaction so they can go back to doing the job that we hired them to do. That's where employee experience starts, designing with the human at the center.
Got it. Great perspective. So we've talked in our prior conversations about building empathy at scale. What is the role of empathy in designing an employee experience?
So if we think about empathy, we've been good at delivering empathy for a long time. If you think about the HR business partners in the field, at a restaurant, in a plant, in an office, if we go in and talk to them, they're going to be empathetic, of course. But as the world of work has changed, what's happened is we've had to think about the fact that that HR business partner may not be right there. They may not be sitting there in their office waiting for you to come in and say, my wife's pregnant. What are the benefits that my company offers? So that being said, I have to think about how do I deliver empathy at scale? The only way to do that in 2022 and beyond is through digitization. Okay? We in HR have been so good at talking about high touch for so long. Like, we want to deliver a high touch experience. We live in a world today where we need to ask the question, is it high touch digital or is it high touch human? And make intentional decisions about which of our journeys do we want to deliver in a digital way to scale empathy that way, and where do people really need to talk to a person to have empathy delivered human to human.
Human to human. I understand. So let's talk about that. This idea of personalization. What is personalization?
So how do we personalize anything? Think about it for a second. We personalize things by knowing information, data, qualities about the person that I'm trying to personalize something towards. So if I'm going to dinner with my mother, I know my mom and what she likes to talk about, which is different than I'm going to dinner with my spouse, versus different which I'm going to dinner with you. So understanding and listening to a person and leveraging data, okay, allows you to create a personalized conversation and a personalized experience. One of the things that we haven't done in HR is taken advantage of the data that we have to truly personalize. So we've been really good at counting people, but we haven't been great at making people count. And this generation, this employee experience generation that we're in, requires us to start, which I know we're going to get to in a second, with the mindset that I'm going to deliver personalization through the data that I have about you.
Okay. So let's pick up on that idea. What's the role of technology in personalization and in employee experience?
So think about your favorite app or your favorite website. Somehow, magically, it knows you. Right? Somehow, magically, it knows you. It's not magic. It's leveraging data, right? The way data, is used is what delivers that personalization. It's what makes it simple. It's what makes it easy. It's what makes it relevant. But what's most important is that what makes it feel like it was designed for me. If I feel like it was designed for me, guess what? I'm more than likely going to use it. If I feel that it was designed for someone else and it's not relevant to me, guess what I do? Abandon, call, and all of a sudden people say, I don't like this technology. So the role of technology is to fuel your vision. The role of technology is to bring your vision to life. And one of the problems that a lot of organizations have is they don't start with a vision. They think that technology is going to create the experience. Technology fuels your vision. Technology alone doesn't create the experience.
Understood. So let's pick up on this idea of what are the top 3 challenges you see organizations come up against in regards to employee experience?
So probably the first, and I'd say the most important, is ownership. Who owns the employee experience? Think about that for a second. We have people that own the intranet and portal from a technology standpoint. Do they own the employee experience? They play a role because that's the front door.
Sure.
That's where I start. Does HR own the employee experience? Of course they play a role because their job is to drive engagement, satisfaction, retention, et cetera, et cetera. But think about for a second, who does the employee actually work for? They work for the business. They work for a manager. They work for a leader. Does that leader own employee experience? Yes. So what's really important, the first thing, is to realize that ownership is an enterprise discussion. It's not just an HR discussion. The second thing is that organizations don't create great, what I like to call measures, or what we like to call measures of success. So they'll say, let's go live with this technology, and it's going to create a brilliant employee experience. And then they're like, this isn't what I thought. I had an intranet link farm before. Now I have an intranet link farm, only in a new piece of technology. So really saying from a measure of success standpoint, what matters most. And the what matters most can't be me only in HR looking at myself through a mirror, but looking through a window at the workforce, thinking about designing for that empty chair and saying, what will the workforce love? Okay? And then the third thing is the sequencing of how I deploy. Okay? And when I say sequencing of how I deploy, notice there's a difference in terminology between deploy and implement. Implementing technology is one thing. Deploying my vision is something completely different. And to get people to adapt, unlearn old ways, and learn new ways requires really important sequencing. So we used to live in a world where minimum viable product was the way to go.
Right.
When we think about experience, we live in a world where minimum lovable product is a requirement. First time that someone sees something, it has to be minimum lovable. And if it's not, what do? The same thing you do when you download an app and you don't like it. You delete it and you never go back. So we have to focus on those three things: ownership, measures of success, and how do I truly create something in the first phase of deployment that people are going to love.
Interesting perspective. So to that end, what are your top 3 recommendations for elevating the employee experience?
So one of the things that's so important about elevating employee experience is to understand where you stand as an organization when it comes to digital maturity. Employee experience is not a project. Employee experience is a way of being. One of the things that's really important when we work with organizations is we try to get them to stop saying we're going to do a digital project, but we are going to be a digital function, which means continuous improvement, sustainability. All of that is key. Not asking someone once a year what their experience is, but asking them at the end of a journey, thumbs up, thumbs down, what did you think? If they don't like it, let's make an adjustment. The second thing is to truly realize I need a solid anti-fragile foundation. Okay? If I don't have a good foundation, all I'm doing is putting frosting on top of a moldy cake. I have to have a foundation that has my data. Okay? Otherwise, when I think about amazing tools like Oracle has, I can't use them. Right? I can't personalize if I don't have the data, if the data is scattered all over the enterprise. And then the third thing is to realize that technology alone doesn't create experience. If I type in a piece of technology, I'm having a baby, and nothing pops up, what happens? I get frustrated. If I type in I'm having a dependent, what pops up? A screen for me to change my dependents. Guess what? That's me implementing HR technology versus deploying human capability. So when we think about elevating that employee experience, how do I deploy human capability in the language and in the style and where I meet the employee in their flow of work? That's the key to driving and elevating experience.
Oh, this is great. I really appreciate your perspective. Are you ready for some audience questions?
Oh, if there are some, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to toss it to Erin. Erin, do we have some questions from the audience?
Yeah, we have a lot of great questions that have come in. And one of them that I'd want to start with here for you, Jason, is what is your non-negotiable in an employee experience strategy?
Wow, so the non-negotiable in an employee experience strategy is truly designed for the employee. We don't call it HR experience. It's not an HR experience strategy. It's an employee experience strategy. So the non-negotiable has to be designed, which means I have to understand personas. I have to design journeys, not processes. Processes generate data. Journeys generate feeling. And at the end of the day, how I'm going to measure success within my employee experience is how people feel. Not just the processes that they check a box and complete, but how they feel.
Erin, any other questions?
Yeah, I think this next question translates well from what you just talked about, the importance of design. But this question here poses, to support employee experience, what's the best way to collaborate with different lines of business? Because sometimes it feels like it's all on HR.
Yeah, another great question. What's so important is when we design our personas, we have to take into account. One of the things people oftentimes think about when they think about personas is, hey, I've got 8,000 job codes, so I need 8,000 personas. That's not right. In fact, it's wrong. And we work with a major airline where they have 3 personas: in the air, on the ramp, and in the office. You know, back to Aaron's question, those are different lines of business. But the way those people work, the way they can work, are they at a desk? You know, are they on a ramp? Are they in flight? The experience has to be focused on how do I meet them where they are. So the way that I break the silos of lines of business is to understand my people and design for them. You know, am I working in a quick serve restaurant? You know, where I don't have kiosks or machines around. I have on a mobile device. Versus do I have a laptop in front of me? You know, understanding the challenges in someone's job, the roadblocks, the hurdles, and being able to bring those into my design is what's going to drive the success across those various business lines.
Interesting. Aaron, do we have any other questions?
We have another question, and I think it's along the lines of what you've been talking about, Jason, and it's how are end users, not key users, shaping the design of the new user experience UI, especially irregular users that want to engage the solution to get things done quickly with minimum support.
So Aaron, you hit a hot button for me. Our employees, our candidates, our alumni, we should never call them users. They're humans. And when we think, even when we say UI, it's not a user experience or user interface, it's a human interface. So when we think about how do we design for them, it's realizing they're not users.
Right.
Like, they're not just another license seat, just like we don't deploy modules in the world. We deploy journeys that cross modules. We think about how do we understand the human. And the way we do that is by understanding how the human feels along each step of the journey. So if I'm going through and saying I'm having a baby, I go through and watch a quick video from the CEO saying congratulations. The next step takes me to a transaction where I enter some information, but then the next step takes me to a place where it shows me the perks, discounts, rewards I get as a new parent. Guess what? That's going to make me feel good. I just delivered a human experience. A user interface is simply one step on the way to creating that human experience.
Got it. Okay. Aaron, anything else from our audience?
Yeah, we have another great question here for Jason on asking some advice. What are some effective ways to increase employee engagement? And then this one's a bit more specific. Are there any specific recommendations for the federal government?
So when we think about, once again, we think about the federal government or any industry. I mean, it's federal government, but we could take this across healthcare. We could take this about retail. It's making sure that I understand what's important to that group. You know, federal government, once again, broad. I'm not going to design for just the federal government. I'm going to design, and that's a mistake a lot of people make. I'm going to design for the type of human I have interacting and creating an experience. So, Aaron, I would beg that person to get out of HR, understand the worker, understand the sentiment of the worker right now. Are they happy at work? Are they not happy at work? Do they feel they have a career path? And make sure that my messaging around deployment ties back directly to what I learned from listening to them. If all I do is push out an HR message, like a peanut butter spread, and I do the same thing, whether it be the federal government, retail, healthcare, it's not going to work. It's tone deaf. We're not listening to how to meet that human where they are and how to help them bring their best selves to work.
Got it. Thank you.